It was a chilly Monday morning at Westford International Academy, a prestigious private school where the hallways gleamed and the chandeliers sparkled brighter than most people's futures. The tuition was more than many made in a year, and the students were driven in with town cars, bodyguards, and designer backpacks. But not everyone in the building was born into privilege. Downstairs, in the quiet utility room tucked beside the boiler, sat Janie Carter, 34 years old, single mom, and janitor. She wore a navy blue jumpsuit and carried a tired smile, her hands rough from scrubbing marble floors, but her spirit soft from raising her 6-year-old daughter, Ellie, on her own. Every morning at 5 a.m., she showed up with coffee in one hand and her daughter's pink lunchbox in the other, working hard to give Ellie a better life. Janie was known among staff for her kindness. To students, she was mostly invisible, a blur in the background. But that was fine with her. She didn't crave attention. She just needed the job. But everything changed on a rainy Thursday. The girl in crisis. That afternoon, as Janie mopped the hallway near the third-grade classrooms, she heard soft sobs. She followed the sound around a corner and found a little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, crumpled in a heap under the trophy case. She was dressed in a pristine gray uniform, her braids undone, her eyes red and swollen. Janie knelt beside her gently. "Hey, sweetheart, are you okay?" The girl flinched. "Go away." Janie recognized that tone. Not anger, but fear pretending to be anger. She'd used it herself more times than she could count growing up. She sat down, a few feet away, giving the girl space. "I won't ask what's wrong," Janie said softly, "but I'm gonna blow bubbles. You can watch. Or not." From her pocket, she pulled out a small tube of pink bubble solution, Ellie's favorite. Janie kept it with her always, for emergencies, and this felt like one. She dipped the wand and gently blew. 1 bubble, then 2, then 5. They floated in the air, catching the fluorescent light like tiny rainbows. The girl's crying slowed. "That one looks like a jelly bean," she whispered. Janie smiled. "A flying jelly bean. Dangerous creature." The girl giggled. "My name's Janie. What's yours?" "Sophia." "Hi, Sophia." More bubbles, more laughter. A janitor and a billionaire's daughter, though neither knew it yet, sitting on a polished floor, surrounded by floating soap and a fragile, growing bond. The billionaire father watching. Unbeknownst to either of them, a tall man in a dark suit stood silently at the end of the hallway. His phone call had just ended when he saw his daughter crying. He was about to rush over, but he stopped, stunned, as he watched the janitor handle something he could not, his daughter's pain. This was Alexander Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Global, worth $6.8 billion, investor in satellites, robotics, and oil, but utterly lost when it came to raising his daughter since her mother passed away 2 years ago. He stood, unseen, as Janie blew bubbles and told stories about jellybean warriors and bubble pirates. He saw Sophia smile in a way she hadn't in months. Something cracked open inside him. A surprising meeting. Later that evening, Janie was finishing her shift when she got a call to report to the headmistress's office. Her heart raced. Had she broken a rule? Was she in trouble? When she arrived, she froze. Sitting there was a man in the dark suit. "Ms. Carter," said the headmistress, "Mr. Whitmore would like to speak with you." He stood and walked toward her, his voice quiet. "That was my daughter, Sophia. You didn't know that, did you?" Janie shook her head, nervous. "She hasn't spoken like that to anyone in months," he continued. "Not to her therapist, not to me, but you reached her. I want to know how." Janie, caught off guard, replied honestly, "I didn't do anything special. I just treated her like a kid, not a problem." For a moment, silence. Then the billionaire smiled. That's exactly what she needed. A life-changing offer. The next day, Janie was called back again. This time, Mr. Whitmore offered her a job, a full-time position as Sophia's caregiver and emotional support aide, with double her current salary, benefits, and a housing allowance. Janie hesitated. I don't know. I have my daughter, and Ellie will have a full scholarship here. She'll be safe and loved, just like Sophia needs to be. Tears welled in Janie's eyes, not for the money, but for the doors opening to her daughter's future. Epilogue. 2 girls, 1 bond. Months passed. Sophia and Ellie became inseparable, bubble-blowing best friends. Janie, no longer mopping floors, spent her days reading with them, creating art, planning games. And Alexander, he began spending real time with his daughter. He asked Janie questions. He listened. He learned. Sometimes, in the quiet hours of the evening, Janie would still blow bubbles, just in case. Because sometimes it's not money or medicine that heals a hurting heart, but something as simple as a bubble, a kind voice, and someone who sees you. The spring air was growing warmer, and the flowers in the Westford Academy courtyard began to bloom again, as if echoing the subtle transformations happening inside its tall walls, and inside it people. Janie Carter now walked those same polished halls with her head held just a little higher. Not because her uniform had changed. She still dressed simply, comfortably, but because for the first time in years, she felt like her life wasn't only surviving, but unfolding. Each day, she helped Sophia with emotional development activities, art therapy, reading, and even something they call bubble mindfulness, a quiet 10-minute session where they'd blow bubbles in silence to calm their thoughts. Teachers began asking Janie for tips. Her work with Sophia was becoming a quiet legend on campus. But it wasn't just Sophia who had changed. Alexander Whitmore was learning too. The billionaire mogul who once ruled boardrooms with intimidating silence had started showing up for school lunches, awkward at first, but trying. The man who once buried his grief in spreadsheets and strategies now carried tiny folded notes in his coat pocket, notes Sophia gave him before class. Sometimes they just said, "I love you, Daddy." And Alexander, he kept every single one. New routines, new dreams. Every morning, Ellie and Sophia walked in hand, like they'd been sisters forever. Their friendship had blossomed into something beautiful, shared sleepovers, lemonade stand experiments, and dreams of becoming bubble scientists together. One evening, as the sun set behind the Whitmore estate, Janie sat on a bench watching the 2 girls laugh and chase bubbles across the lawn. Alexander joined her, holding 2 cups of tea. "You brought color back into her life," he said softly. Janie looked at him. She just needed to be seen. "That's all." He turned toward her, his voice unusually quiet. "And what about you? Who's been seeing you?" The question caught her off guard. For years, Janie had been everyone's support, Ellie's rock, her mother's caretaker before she passed, her ex's shadow when he walked out without goodbye. She never expected anyone to ask about her needs. She chuckled. "I'm still working on that part." Alexander nodded. "Then let's start now." A quiet dinner, and something more. That weekend, he invited Janie and Ellie over for dinner. No staff, no chefs, just him in an apron, fumbling with spaghetti and garlic bread. Janie laughed when he spilled sauce on the counter. Billionaire can build satellites but can't make marinara. "I'm used to contracts and deals, not boiling pasta," he groaned, smiling. Dinner was imperfect and beautiful. The girls giggled over spaghetti noodles, and Janie realized, for the first time in years, she wasn't tired. Not bone-deep tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from worrying how you'll pay rent, or if your daughter's lunch has enough nutrition. She was full, not just from food, but from peace. And when Alexander walked them to their car, he paused. "I don't want to rush anything," he said, voice low, "but I'd like to get to know you. Not just Sophia's caregiver. Not just the woman who saved my daughter. You." Janie looked at him, really looked. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was a grieving father trying to rebuild. A man finally learning how to feel again. And maybe, just maybe, a man who could love deeply if he let himself. "I'd like that too," she whispered. The ripple effect. By summer, changes had swept through Westford. Sophia no longer needed a therapist full-time. Ellie had won a regional storytelling contest, a tale about a girl who caught dreams inside soap bubbles. And Janie? She'd been invited to help the school create a wellness program for kids with emotional struggles, combining art, storytelling, and yes, bubble time. Word of her work spread far beyond campus. One day, she received a letter. Dear Ms. Carter, I heard what you did for Sophia. I have a daughter too, and I've never seen anything like what you've accomplished. We'd like to sponsor your methods as a national school program. It was signed by another billionaire from a competing firm. Janie laughed when she read it. What is this? The bubble arms race? Alexander grinned. Let them compete. You've got the original. One more sunset. One evening, as fireflies dance across the lawn and the girls chase them in the fading light, Janie and Alexander sat again on that old bench. Do you ever think about what this is turning into? She asked him. He looked at her for a long time. All the time, he said, and I don't want to mess it up. You won't, she whispered. And just then, a bubble drifted between them. A stray one, probably left from the girls. It floated up, caught in the golden light of dusk, then popped softly between them, like a silent promise. The days passed, woven with laughter, healing, and slow-blooming love. But life, as always, was not without its storms. Janie Carter had spent years running from the past, but one thing she had learned: no matter how far you walk, some shadows find their way back. It started with a phone call. A voice she thought she'd never hear again. She was in the school garden with Sophia and Ellie, helping them paint birdhouses for the spring fair. The wind was soft, sunlight kissing their faces, when her phone rang. She answered without looking. Hello. A beat, then a voice, rough and bitter. Janie, it's me, Darren. The world around her froze. Darren Morris, the man who disappeared 7 years ago, Ellie's father. The man who left Janie pregnant, alone, and barely holding on. He had vanished without explanation, without responsibility. Not a letter, not a word. Now here he was, like a ghost over the phone line. I heard about your new life, he said. That you're working for some rich guy. Must be nice. Janie's throat tightened. What do you want? He chuckled. What I deserve. I want to see my daughter. Janie's hands trembled. You don't get to call her your daughter after 7 years of silence. You think just because some billionaire is spoiling you, you can keep me away from her, he snapped. You don't get to erase me. He hung up. Janie stood there, shaking, her mind spinning. Ellie and Sophia were still painting, laughing, oblivious to the cold wind that had just blown through Janie's soul. Alexander's reaction. That evening, Janie sat on Alexander's porch, her tea untouched. She told him everything about Darren, the phone call, and her fears. I don't want Ellie dragged into this. I don't want him to hurt her. I don't even know if I have the right to keep him away legally. Alexander listened silently. Then, in a quiet, steel-cold voice, he said, He is not going to touch your daughter. I will make sure of that. I don't want trouble, Alex. I just want peace. And you'll have it, he promised. Whatever it takes. Legal storms and emotional battles. Within days, Alexander's legal team had investigated Darren thoroughly. They uncovered a history of arrests, unpaid debts, and a failed attempt to claim fatherhood rights over another child years ago. A cease and desist letter was issued, but Darren didn't back down. He showed up one afternoon. As Janie waited in the school courtyard for Ellie, a man with a scruffy beard and anger in his eyes approached. That her? He said, pointing at Ellie across the lawn. My daughter. Janie stepped between them, shielding her child. You come near her again, and I will call the police. He sneered. She deserves to know where she really came from. Suddenly, another voice boomed across the courtyard. She knows, said Alexander, walking toward them. She knows she came from love. She knows she's protected. And she knows a man like you abandoned her. Darren's face turned red. You think your money scares me? No, Alexander said, but the law should. And if that doesn't work, I will. Campus security escorted Darren off the property. Police filed a restraining order, but the emotional damage lingered. That night, Ellie asked her mother a simple question. Was that man my dad? Janie looked into her daughter's big brown eyes and took a deep breath. He's the man who helped bring you into the world. But being a dad, that's not just about that. It's about showing up, loving, protecting, and you already have someone who does all that. Mr. Alex, she asked quietly. Janie smiled. Maybe, if you want. Ellie nodded. I like him. He gives me tea and read me the funny books. Turning pain into purpose. Rather than crumble under the stress, Janie turned her pain into purpose. She began hosting community sessions for single parents and trauma-affected children at the school every weekend. It was simple at first, story time, art, and bubble therapy, but the effect was stunning. Kids who wouldn't speak in counseling opened up over glitter paint and floating bubbles. Alexander offered to fund the program fully, but Janie insisted on something else. Let the parents contribute how they can. Even if it's time, not money. I want this to feel owned, not given. He nodded. He admired that about her. She didn't just fix problems. She built futures. An unexpected proposal. Not that one. Yet, weeks later, the headmistress of Westford called Janie into her office. I've been watching you, Janie, she said. You've done more for our students and staff than anyone else this year. We want to offer you a permanent position on our mental health and wellness board. Full salary, full respect. Janie stayed, stunned. I was a janitor here just months ago. Yes, the headmistress said. And even then, you were changing lives. A quiet confession. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, Janie stood on the balcony of Alexander's estate, looking at the stars. He joined her, 2 cups of cocoa in hand. I've seen the way you look at me, she said softly. I've never tried to hide it. She turned to him. Why me? You could be with anyone. He looked at her, quiet for a moment. Because when I was a broken man, you saved the one person I couldn't reach. Because you didn't need anything from me. And because you showed me what real love looks like, through a bubble wand. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm scared, she whispered. I don't know if I know how to love someone again. He stepped closer. Then we'll take it one bubble at a time. To be continued. What's next? A growing bond between Alexander and Ellie. A whisper of romance blooming into love. A secret from Janie's past still waiting to be uncovered. And a final test that will determine everything they built. Rain had fallen all morning at Westford Academy, turning the courtyard into a glistening sea of puddles. But inside the library, warmth blossomed, not from the fireplaces or the polished mahogany shelves, but from the laughter of 2 little girls and the woman who had changed everything. Janie Carter knelt beside a table where Sophia and Ellie were drawing a giant mural of bubbles and stars. It was a day before the Academy's first ever Heart and Mind Festival, a celebration of emotional growth and healing through creativity, a program Janie had spearheaded. She was no longer the woman scrubbing floors in the shadows. She was a respected leader, an innovator, and, most of all, a mother whose quiet courage had reshaped lives, including her own. But one story remained unfinished. A question of the heart. That evening, Janie was in her modest apartment on the Whitmore Estate grounds. Ellie was asleep, curled up with a stuffed unicorn. A soft knock came at the door. She opened it to find Alexander, standing in the rain, drenched but smiling. You're soaking wet, she said, laughing. He held up a small bottle. I brought the bubbles. She blinked. Why? Because I needed courage. He stepped inside and set the bottle on the counter. I've watched you transform everything around you. You healed Sophia in ways I never could. You made this cold house a home. You gave me something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. And I don't want to keep pretending this is just friendship anymore. Janie's heart pounded. I've loved you for a long time, he said. Quietly, respectfully. But if there's even a part of you that feels the same, then I don't want to waste another day. Tears welled in her eyes. You want honesty, she whispered. I was scared of this. Scared you'd outgrow me. That I'd never fit in your world. Alexander gently took her hand. You didn't fit in my world, he said. You changed it. The proposal. The Heart and Mind Festival was a masterpiece. Parents, staff, and even local media attended. Children who once feared speaking now stood proudly on stage reciting poems and stories. Sophia and Ellie were the stars of the mural exhibit. And just before the event ended, Alexander took the microphone. "There's one more story I want to share," he said, voice steady. He looked toward Janie, standing in the back, confused. "I once lost myself in grief. I had money, power, and nothing that mattered. Then a janitor blew bubbles with my daughter, and everything changed. That woman became our light, our home." Gasps rippled through the room as he stepped off the stage, walked to her, and knelt in front of everyone. He pulled out a simple, elegant ring. "Janie Carter, will you marry me?" Silence. Then Ellie's voice, "Say yes, Mommy." Janie choked on a laugh, tears falling freely. She nodded. "Yes, yes, I will." The room erupted in applause. Sophia hugged her new bonus mom. Ellie jumped up and down, and Alexander, for the first time in years, looked at peace. Epilogue: the family they built. A year later, the Whitmore estate had changed. The vast gardens now held community playdates. The ballroom hosted art therapy workshops, and the West Wing converted into a learning center named the Carter House of Courage. Janie ran it alongside a team of therapists and volunteers, many of them single parents she had once supported. Sophia and Ellie now shared a room by choice, giggling under blankets and whispering dreams. Alexander, once a man of steel and silence, now rose early to pack lunchboxes and walk the girls to school, holding both their hands. And Janie? She stood at the edge of the property every evening, blowing bubbles into the sunset, not because she needed to anymore, but because it reminded her, love doesn't arrive with thunder. Sometimes it floats in quietly, soft as a bubble, strong as a mother's heart. Dizzy the end, Dizzy.